didn't know why villagers only lived within the vicinity of one of these bells. What was so special about them? It was just another one of the things that I didn't understand about the people of the savannah. I was different, there was no denying that. But I welcomed the customs of those I'd met, and if this bell is what it takes to start a community here, then so be it. Of the things that was also needed to start a community was living space, and currently the only place to sleep was the bunker. So I started working on the bunkhouse. It was difficult to focus on being careful when I was busy bustling around, and the more I had built, the brighter and safer it was. But danger could still be found just around the corner. I must have glanced at the Enderman through the grass, because by the time I saw it, it was already enraged. Business as usual, and business at the moment was still smoothing the cobblestone and cutting it into bricks. That and the other duties of the homestead was keeping me plenty busy. It was a shame that sometimes one job could create two more. Nothing wrong with being lucky sometimes. It's just that the other ingredient for success is preparation. I'm also going to need a lot more wood. Through the efforts of Gloria's pamphlets and Georges's expeditions, it was expected that more people were going to move to the savannah. At least that's what the optimistic villagers said, and I wanted to be ready. When I had excavated for the bunkhouse, I found even more iron and coal on the plateau. With all the stone and lumber I had gathered, my stockpiles were looking healthier than ever. It was cathartic to fill the empty chests, knowing that with each swing of my axe or shot of my infinity bow, I'd accrue just a little bit more. And the slow gathering of materials made it all the more satisfying to use those stockpiles up. I had travelled all over the savannah since I'd arrived, and some of the things I'd gathered were stored at one or another of the places I'd stayed. Tonight, I was using the time where it was dangerous to chop wood to instead travel to Copperwater Cave. I'd taken the chest boat, so there was no space to fit one of my furry friends, but company found me. A friendly dolphin escorted me into the dock of the cave. At least it was only half of the creatures out there that wanted to eat me. I was fully in the mindset of resource consolidation. There wasn't too much left at Copperwater Cave, but there was an entire chest of cobblestone. I was going to turn these into stone bricks too. I found the air seemed clearer away from home, and for some reason I felt a sense of relieved burden. I told the dolphin about it on the way home. A Aside from a few hiccups, work on the bunkhouse was coming along nicely, even though it was difficult to navigate around the plateau's chasm. The scaffold certainly helped. Despite the peculiar feeling that had been niggling at me, the homestead was pleasantly calm. The thing about my undying was, it still hurt. Partly because Aquazar would berate me each time she sensed a loss of magic. I was using her rudeness as an excuse to ignore her. There was something she wanted to ask me. In truth, I felt sorry for the imprisoned witch. I'd go see her in a bit. But it would have to wait. Muttley had helped me get the infinity bow back from the skeleton. I really ought to be more careful. So it was lazy of me to leave the dank foundations of the bunkhouse unlit. I was acting as brazen as Two-Bone and Wolfgang. That might have something to do with the infinity bow itself. It was a powerful weapon. It finally happened. I had finished smoothing the last of the cobblestone in the furnace and cutting it into bricks. The thing was, for all the cobblestone I had, I'd not saved enough for the bunkhouse. Luckily, my new mine was waiting for me, and with a few adjustments, it was an easy source for more. Been sleeping a lot recently. The plateau chasm was dangerous enough in the day. Perhaps that was why, when I did end up staying up for long enough, I forgot about the phantoms. When they appeared, their grating shrieks didn't pause to constantly remind me of their presence. Daily duties around the homestead might have slowed me down a bit, but it was the produce I could sell in Lushville that would keep this place afloat, until people found the Hoof and Udder Bakery and Tavern to be a place they wanted to spend their emeralds. I wondered if there was a farmer I could teach these techniques to. The mechanisms I had implemented were certainly very different to how it worked in Lushville, and they were the premier farmers in the region. At the very least, I'd have to secure this place at some point. Monsters were all too common in the region, but that didn't mean I would put up for it in my town. When people moved in, perhaps it could be someone's job to feed the animals with their favourite foods. At the moment, most of the animals had to sort out feeding themselves with what I left them. I would soon find out how the wolves fed themselves whilst I was gone. In the morning, I would take the wolves out with me to shear wool from sheep for the bunkhouse beds. And tonight, I was accompanied by Seville, Enin and Titan, who warded off the phantoms. The hills of the dirty slopes were bristling with animals, and I easily found more than enough sheep to provide wool for the beds. I got to see the wolves playing together, or at least that's what I thought they were doing. Muttony was teaching Wolfgang how to hunt, and Two-Bone was joining in too. I'm glad they were on my side, but there was little I could do to stop them today as they thinned the herd. It was my turn to hunt when I noticed the group of pillagers close to my home. Last time, I'd gone in head first, but this time would be different. I had the infinity bow. It was the first time I'd seen two groups of pillagers attack in unison. Luckily, I had unknowingly cut off the first group before they reached Fool's Landing, and with the two groups separated, the element of surprise, and the three wolves, the pillagers stood no chance. In the aftermath of the wolves' feast on the dirty slopes, I had a considerable amount of things I wouldn't normally have gathered. I had an idea of how to use them, but I'd need ink first. After a breezy sail along the cliff face, I found an abundance nearby a gravelly cliff, where I also gathered some sand. These small outings were made all the easier since I'd built the mine shaft as a means to reach the sea from the plateau. I'd have to look for ways to make other trips easier too. I realised the glass panes I'd used in the second mine shaft may not be sturdy enough, so I replaced them with glass blocks. I'd been writing in Nellie's pages since I met her. However, when I did, the writing shortly ebbed away. We'd come a long way together now, and if I needed to, she'd show me what I wrote previously. That said, I didn't want to have to bug her every time, so I spent the night writing out my adventures into leather-bound books, with the gift from Lud. When I wrote them out one by one, I started to realise just how much I'd accomplished since I came here, how many people I'd met, and all the places I'd been. I left the current book half finished in the cartography suite. I'd finish it soon, once I could write about the first, or rather the second resident of Fool's Landing. The rest of the books I put onto the shelves in the enchanting room. It was a welcome break to write down my endeavours after I finished the bunkhouse, but now it was time to place down the bell and wait for someone to move in. Failing that, I'd go and find someone. I quickly checked the enchanted books to see if any of them would work as shield enchantments, like Abranus had said. One looked like it could work, but I didn't use it yet, because Gloria would probably want to translate the artefact. whilst I was feeling considerate, I should probably see what it was Aquazar wanted.
When you go off on your adventures, I get so lonely. I would ask that you go and fetch my cat Manx to keep me company in this prison.
It was true that the other cats tended to avoid Aquazar. I asked her where Manx was. Aquazar said that Manx was back in her hut, where she'd planned to return after stealing the magic from the enchanting table. She pointed out on my map where her hut was, except where she pointed to was off of my map, far off of my map, to the southeast.
Manx will still be there, waiting for me.
It was ages away, further than any trip I'd made so far, except maybe the one that brought me here in the first place. In the end, Aquazar guilt-tripped me into going, so the bell would have to wait. She insisted I lift the curse the pillager captain had afflicted me with before I go, and I thought it'd be a good idea to stock up on fish for Manx, hoping that he'd like them as much as the other cats did. So it was back to Gravelly Cliff. Good thing I was really into my fishing last time I was here. I grabbed some more sand whilst I was there, and when I was back, started prepping for a long journey. My anvil broke with all the repairs I was making to my better equipment. But even after I replaced it, fixed up the tools and weapons, as well as the enchanted iron armour, I still had plenty of iron left. If I was careful in my journey, I should have what I need to get me there safe. I'd also crafted some maps and a cartography table to work on them along the way. If it was as far as Aquazar said, I might get there all right, but would certainly need the maps not to get lost on the way back. I said goodbye to the wolves and the cats, to Shudder and Fish, to Dizzy, to Poof, and to the skeleton horses. I only brought Two Bone along. I didn't want anyone else to get lost. The Grumpy village was on my route out of the savannah, so I stayed the night, cooking the beef from Lushfield for the villagers. A pseudo feast where I told everyone about my quest to find Aquazar's cat, before a deep sleep, ready to kick off the journey at first light. It was in the jungle where I first walked off my map. The journey so far had been simple, but I was about to venture further than I had before, and excitement gripped me. With a fresh map in hand, I pressed on with my journey. I came across a peculiar forest, dark wood and mushroom trees. Despite seeing countless trees on my trip, the never-ending forest was to the southwest, not the southeast where I was. It was in the dark forest where I made a little hut and stayed the night. Before I continued, I stayed to fell more of the dark trees. I realised it was the same type of tree as the dark oak sapling I had back at home. Now that I saw the trees, it was clear that they only grew thick trunks. So I chopped until I had 3 more saplings to plant with the one I already had. That took a whole day. Came across a village. The villagers here wore warmer clothes than those in the savannah, but the differences in their customs didn't stop there. I introduced myself and was welcomed. The lively village was bustling, far more so than the 3 villages in the savannah were when I first met them. The people here knew about the savannah and even some of its rich history, but they told me this area was full of other villages. So it used to be that most people left the dangerous savannah alone. It was only recently people started moving back there. Despite their hospitality, I didn't stay, instead opting to march forward, that night needing to make yet another map. It was in a birch forest where I made my final map. I collected a spruce sapling earlier that day, and all in all the adventure was going well. But I was starting to doubt Aquasar's directions. What if I never found her hut? And there it was, in the swamp, just where Aquasar had said. As I stepped down the hill into the swamp, I heard someone else. But when I called out, there was no response. Did Aquasar have a witch friend? I wish he'd warned me. Expecting mischief here, I ignored it and started looking for Manx. Here, Manx, lots of lovely cod. As I approached the hut, I heard a voice.
You've come to the wrong place.
The hut was empty. I told the voice I was here for Manx, and then I'd be gone.
So, Aquasar sent you. Well, I'm afraid Manx is my cat now.
The voice wasn't Aquasar's friend, it was her enemy. I saw Manx, and ignoring the voice's taunts, I slowly approached. I think Manx was just as wary of the voice as I was. It didn't take much to win Manx's affection when I caught him. The voice didn't like that.
You will not reunite Manx with that paltry witch Aquasar.
Where was it coming from? There was a strange resonance to the voice that made it hard to pinpoint.
A pity you won't be around to tell Aquasar how you failed. Aquasar's precious villager friends can't help her now.
Tossed and turned that night following the witch's poison. I couldn't help but think about what the witch had said regarding Aquasar's villager friends. I wonder if it was a village nearby. The one I'd passed was surely too far away. Before setting off, I had a bit of time to get to know Manx. Now that his captor was gone, he was confident and independent. At the top of the hill, I spotted something in the distance. I could see what looked like a village, but even with the spyglass, I couldn't make it out exactly, only that something was wrong. When I got to the village, it was deserted. Spiderwebs covered the buildings, and the untouched cobblestone had been lined with moss. And then I saw a villager. They had been turned into a zombie. Stuck within a deep spiderweb, I felt immense pity for the creature. This must be the village the witch was talking about. Whatever the witch had done here, I couldn't imagine that they deserved it. The village bell was still there. Despite knowing the value of it, I didn't take it, for if I did, I was surely condemning the soul of the village to be forgotten to history. It may have been silly, but leaving the bell felt like this desolate place still had some hope. Nearby on a hill was a collection of cherry blossom trees. The breeze rustled the leaves of the trees and the pink flowers that grew beneath them. I cut down a choice few so I could take some of the saplings back with me. Even the wildlife was peaceful up here. I planted the blue cornflower I picked in the desolate village as a small token for them. The calmness I'd found was broken by a group of pillagers. What were they doing way out here? This was the third group that I'd encountered recently, and I was starting to think that they were hunting me. But how had they found me? I couldn't dwell on that now, because it was already dark, and I was rushing back to the desolate village for somewhere to sleep, hoping that I could sneak past the monsters. With a full inventory, I started the trip back home. With my maps and 2 bone of Manx to keep me company, the way back was smooth, more or less. Through forests and over hills, we trekked together. 2 bone and I getting to know Manx as we did. The black cat had been waiting for Aquazar, at least before the other witch had got to him, so I was left wondering why he'd followed me now. Perhaps he knew that I was reuniting him with the moody witch, who apparently was more amicable than I thought. wasn't looking forward to telling her what had come of her village. Then again, I didn't even know what the village meant to her. I only had what the other witch said to go on. Could Aquazar really have been friendly with a group of villagers? She had hardly made the best first impression on me. Before I reached the grumpy village, I found a cow and dispelled the villager curse I was becoming accustomed to. I didn't know exactly what it did, but Aquazar had been adamant that it didn't follow me to her witch's hut. Maybe she didn't want me near her village with it. Either way, the fresh curse dispelled was one less thing to worry about as I approached the steep valleys that lay between me and the outpost. I didn't want to get caught out here at night. I knew that feeling. It was the other Enderman, and guessed who was with him. Immediately after the encounter, I was immersed by the peculiar feeling that was nagging me back home, only now it was stronger, far stronger. That night, I was plagued with bad dreams. Saw Welcome Peak, I breathed a sigh of relief. I'd made it back. I could relax, not having to worry that Two-Bone or Manx might get lost in the jungle, or that I'd get caught out in the dark somewhere I didn't know. In the forge, I was greeted warmly by the triplets, who wanted to know about my adventure, so I regaled them about the town I visited, Manx, the imposter witch, and the desolate village that had something to do with the incarcerated Aquazar in Fool's Landing. You must be exhausted. I'll bet you want to go home and rest up. Fergus was right. I was weary. Borg, the hulking golem of the forge, watched me go. After I'd put everything away from the adventure, I brought Manx with me to go and see Aquazar. The ethereal witch was waiting for me, but after her initial excitement of seeing her cat, she became reserved and serious. I'd not seen her act like this before. Her tone didn't change until I told her about the other witch that was squatting in her hut, and asked her about the desolate village.
You mean they're all dead? Damn Prologue! She has always hated me, but I never thought that she could. I'm glad for what you did to her. And you brought me Manx. Thank you. It's just that when you were gone, he promised to release me, you see. You need to get out of here. Now.
I didn't know what Aquazar was talking about, but suddenly that peculiar feeling was back.
Oh no! He's here!
As I slowly turned around, the peculiar feeling grew into one of dread. The other Enderman was standing there. I was cornered, and then he looked at me. In the blindness of the unrelenting visions, I desperately looked towards Aquazar for help, but she was gone. The Enderman was clawing at my mind, so I began to fight back. Vision after vision thrust themselves through my consciousness, each one a side effect of the Enderman's failed attempts to corrupt me. I was seeing the fabric of reality warped through the eyes of the beast standing in front of me. As our minds melded in the ongoing battle, the visions I had seen before were becoming clear. The devastation of the old kingdom, the rise of the monsters, the cataclysm. It was caused by this Enderman when they opened a portal to the end of the world. It wanted to dominate our plane, but were thwarted by a brave few left to stand against them. And guessed. I was already tired from the journey, and when the Enderman broke the link, I almost fell to the floor in exhaustion, unable to even muster a whimper. And then I saw why I'd been released. Guest had come. The encounter with me had weakened the other Enderman, but Guest had still had his work cut out. More Enderman visions were bleeding out from the duel I was witnessing, and I saw things I didn't understand. When Guest approached me, he told me to leave the enchanting room. There wasn't much time. Still drained and stunned, I hesitated and watched. That's when the monster went berserk. I had sensed the departure of the other Enderman, and after a night of even more intense dreams, I went back to my enchanting room. Still somewhat wary as I did. I wouldn't be able to endure another encounter so soon. Guest and Aquazar were waiting for me. Aquazar could only vaguely interpret the language of the Endermen, like one would try and interpret the meaning of a dream. I, on the other hand, was finding communicating with Guest easier than ever before. And finally, I could ask, in what felt like plain language, who the other Enderman was. Dall-E, Guest told me, was an Enderman as old as they come. He was responsible for the cataclysm of this world that brought down the civilizations of man that had existed here before, the visions of which I'd already seen. But it broke him. Dall-E is a husk of what he once was. But whatever is left of his mind is determined. He wants to open the portals to the end once again. Doing so would mean calamity for the people of the savannah and beyond. He is weak, and Guest would do what he could to stop him, but we must prepare. Last time, Dall-E used human agents. For now, though, he's likely lost. What does that mean? Endermen do not see the overworld like we do. We are from a different plane. Since the cataclysm, most Endermen wander in a daze, not able to piece the dimensions together. After this encounter, Dall-E is weakened and would be experiencing things in much the same way. Sounds like hell. It is a purgatory. I turned to Aquazar. She didn't know what Guest and I had said. I wanted to hate her for leading Dall-E here, but she was a prisoner after all, even if it was of her own making. I couldn't really blame her for wanting to escape, and she was so remorseful now, I couldn't help but forgive her. So I explained what I understood of the situation. Only I couldn't. I went to speak, but the words didn't come out. I had lost my voice. Akuzar could tell something was wrong.
I don't think that curse will wash out with milk.
What do I do? I can't speak. Guest interrupted my panic. I could now see how diminished he was. Guest mustered all his remaining strength. Unite the people of the savannah. And with that, he vanished. I finished the latest chapter of my journal and put it next to the bookshelves where I had my voice stolen by the wretched Dall-E. I hadn't even got to make fun of Akuzar for not knowing how to enchant a shield. In the open air, I tried to speak, sing and shout. Nothing came. The only step I could think to take towards getting my voice back was to follow Guest's instruction. Unite the savannah. My journey here had only just begun. So guys, this is going to be the last chapter of this season. I am going to take a bit of a break, mainly because I've got some planning to do with what's going to happen next in the story, but also because work is about to heat up again, and it's going to be really hard to post even once every 2 weeks moving forward, so I'm going to try and keep it as regular as I can. Because I really enjoy doing it, and I want to carry on. There are going to be some changes in the next season, but I'm going to leave that as a surprise. Nothing too drastic. Maybe a few things are a bit drastic, but yeah, I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.